It's hot, it's early, but we have viewer games and we got a lot of them to get through. Let's jump into it. Welcome back, everyone, to Random Thoughts. As mentioned on the previous viewer game breakdown, there has been such a spectacular and fantastic and enormous response to my call out for viewer games that there is a backlog. And I want to make sure that we get through every game, we talk about every game, and we highlight each of those games that have been submitted. So we're going to be doing this offline. And as I started out with, it's very hot here. It's very early. I got my coffee next to me despite it being hot to make sure that we are ready to go. So we're going to jump in. Quick aside, everybody, before we get into the actual content, I was accepted into the Phobies Content Affiliate Program, the content creator program, you might call it. Shout out to the Phobies team and thank you for that. But the reason I'm telling you, everybody out there, dear viewer, dear listener, is to let everybody know that I do receive some compensation from the Phobies team as a result of being part of that program. Now, I loved Phobies before, and I still love Phobies now, and I expect I will still continue to love Phobies in the future. So look forward to more Phobies content coming from Random Thoughts. So now, on with the show. All right, everyone, here we are zoning into our first game. This is submitted by Ram. Up there in the corner, zoning in the orange trunks is our hero. And the bad guy here, zoning in the blue trunks on the left side of Phobopolis, is Psycho. Now, this is a map that has recently come into the rotation. Well, there's been a rotation, so I can't even really say recently anymore. But the big problem with this map is that a lot of people have a big problem with this map. They're not a huge fan. It is definitely very weird. You get a lot of obstacles, a lot of lobbing, and you get an odd number of panic points. So therefore, we're back to we're going to fight over the specific center one. And we'll see how Crazy Stripes, or Ram here, who's shown up in a variety of other game highlights, so shout out to them for submitting yet another game. We'll see how this works out for them and what they do to try and hold this game into the victory column. Now, the opener from our blue player is very reasonable. We've seen Droney on this actually in the live stream reviews, which, by the way, if you're interested in some live Phobies content, come on over to the Twitch live stream, RTChompGG. But we get a follow-up spider. This is really just one drop, but it was a 2-0 panic advantage early on. The follow-up here from Crazy Stripes is pretty interesting. Also fairly standard. You get the cassowary plus one drop. The Gravedigger can be very valuable on this map, either to lock stuff off or to create space, create more wiggle room on your side of the board. Now, in this particular case, it's actually advancing and locking down. As mentioned, you can set up a variety of lockdowns on this map. There's choke points everywhere. And here we see one of those choke points suddenly becoming a blockage. This artery here for our blue player is maybe needs some surgery. But in the meantime, a murder wing came in. We probably won't see this Gravedigger go down, although I guess it's not impossible depending on our blue player's collection. But we'll see what comes out here. We now get a orange panic point advantage thanks to the cowbell and cassowary repositioning, and then a Gin Sting to supplement allows a one-key bank for our orange player. And right now, they're looking pretty good. They have the majority of the panic points. They have the ability to bully the blue player's Phobies out of position. Now, this is a little strange. I didn't actually count this. So when I was saying it earlier, oh, wow. This is a level 10 murder wing. This is a level 12 snowball. Ooh, I should have just clicked on these. My apologies. I didn't expect that much damage to come out of these. For some reason in my head I was thinking these are much lower level, but yeah, these just straight up annihilate this Gravedigger, but the tempo gained by it may end up being sufficient because this locks off one of the vaults effectively, or at least forces our blue player to invest a lot of resources into it. Now, the follow-up is a Fire Ant, which is very much a threat on this map. It's a lobber, it can set up traps, it also can ignite things through either of those means. Now, we're probably going to get a takedown here on the murder wing. Yep. Since Fireball is down, I can kind of understand this. The cassowary is not likely to die. I expect more damage to go down on this Gin Sting, but the follow-up Mount Crushmore here means that it's going to hopefully shoo away this Fire Ant. I imagine the Fire Ant's not interested in coming down here and getting tagged twice by the Gin Sting, but we'll see how aggressive our blue player wants to play it. So they actually lay down a trap on the center point, which from a defensive position is not really what you want to do. Need a quick sip there. Now, why don't you want to do that? Here's the reason. You lay down this trap, odds are, like, you have to reclaim this point or your opponent's never going to stand on the trap again, right? Yes, there are scenarios where you could bait them into it that, you know, maybe you set something up here and try and draw them in. Odds are I don't expect that to happen. We're going to probably see our orange player just back off and then not care. Now, we actually see the somewhat sacrificial cassowary come down. And then, of course, Crushmore rolling up. With the demise of Gravedigger, Crushmore has now assumed the construction duties and could have actually locked off this top part if our orange player so chose. Clearly, that wasn't the case. But in the meantime, we see the weakening of the statue, the elimination here, but those are 5 orange panic points, by the way. Count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a lot of panic points, and therefore over 1,100 damage that's coming down on the blue heart. Now, the blue player here has followed up with a Smother Mother, which will allow it to bypass, thanks to its burrow movement, some of the obstacles. It also has a yoink, so it can be very threatening. But you're in a world of hurt right now. 4,900 health. Yeah, that seems like a lot. You know, it's about halfway. But your opponent controls literally every panic point. Like, that seems bad. That seems not good. So we see the second lockdown go down with another statue. The construction crew comes in, and we get a Chuck follow-up. Now, I imagine our blue player has to start panicking at this stage. They're going to start trying to aggressively invade, because they kind of have to. Because a couple more turns of this, and the game is over. Well, we get an Alistor, another phobie similar to this map that people are distraught over whenever they see it. The Life Force ability is pretty strong. Now, it's only a level 4 Alistor, so it's not the most intimidating, but the flight does allow it to cap this point. Now, the Smother Mother positions to the south here, which is a little odd. And we get more traps going down. So our blue player's playing this very patiently. They have admittedly stemmed some of the bleeding by recapping this point, but it's not... I don't know. It seems like that's still... This is still a lot of damage. In the meantime, we're getting Chuck doing the slow march in order to... Oh, no. Remember when I said that this trap was not going to get stepped on? Sometimes you step on the trap. Now, how much was this trap worth? This was 195 damage plus 260 from the burn. The burn is going to last there for a few turns. And, as you can see, it's a big AoE burn. So, it's going to consume a bunch of the space here. I need that coffee. Tired. had the live stream last night. So, in the meantime, we have the Smother Mother advance. This kind of makes sense. We get the Snowball going in and spitting on Crushmore. And then some follow-up lobs in order to deal some additional damage to Ginsting. Now, Ginsting is going to have to get out or sacrifice itself. One of the two options. It's clearly not going to stand there and do nothing. So I guess really that entire set of statements was sort of meaningless, but, you know, I got to fill the silence somehow. So Ginsting and Chuck combine with Crushmore in order to take down the Fire Ant. I respect it. Definitely makes sense. Fire Ant was one of the big threats. Now, the Ginsting is not long for this world, given the fire damage. It's going to die to the fire at minimum. Clearly, the blue player could finish it off, but that would be kind of a waste of time, except within the context, and this is a decent reason for Orange to leave the Ginsting there and do this series of attacks. Aside from eliminating the Fire Ant, the other reason is that if you have the Ginsting here, and they allow it to die to the fire, you are controlling that point for one turn longer, because it's not dying to the fire on your turn, it'll die to the fire at the end of their turn, and you still control the panic point going into your follow-up turn. So therefore, you still have this 3-2 panic point advantage. If you ran it away, it opens it up that possibly this spider walks in, or Snowball, something recaps it, and then it's a blue panic point advantage. But we get an erratic follow-up. Erratic is somewhat okay for this map. Obviously, you can get a lot of things clustered, at least to a degree. Now, we get the invade from the Smother Mother, which seems a little odd. I guess our blue player wanted to ensure that they held onto the pole, but they eliminate this. Like, this is a strange play to me. The reposition here presumably is in order to try and tag the erratic. Okay. But then why invade here with the Smother Mother, take damage for no reason? Well, actually, did the Ginsting Maybe I miscounted. Okay, the Ginseng had enough health to live. Never mind. So the Smother Mother was needed. That whole big brain play by Orange that I was trying to explain there, that wasn't a thing. It was just going to live no matter what, so never mind me. Instead, we get the Smother Mother takedown. We get the Klepto going in. Klepto is able to lob over these obstacles, but that kind of pins it up here a little bit. It's going to take some time for it to work its way back into the mix if our Orange player retreats. And remember, Chuck is also a lob. So now we see the invade, sort of, we'll call it an invade, from the Cowbell, and the retreat from the Crushmore. Now, the Crushmore is going to be in position to take shots on the Smother Mother if it elects to take the center point. Clearly down here, there really wasn't ever a chance of this spider connecting with this, because Alistor's not going to kill the Stairmaster. Yes, the Stairmaster could get poisoned, but we do have the follow-up Clinico that's going to make its way down here. Like, Stairmaster could take a shot, retreat, Clinico comes in, and then all of a sudden, that poison's irrelevant. So, as we hand the turn back to our blue player, let's see how they react. We get the fairly obvious play, poison onto the Stairmaster, one shot, clear out the Cowbell, and now, instead of a 4-to-1 panic point advantage, it's 3-2 once again. But 1,125 health on the blue heart. You gotta be in panic mode at this stage, because you're down from a board position perspective, you're down from a key perspective, you only have one left. I mean, your opponent only had 2, and now they have 0. But the board position, the panic points, the life totals, this is all pretty scary if you are our blue player. Now, we get some hits going down here on Alistor, and it's actually enough to take it down. Again, only a level 4 Alistor, so double Eternal Night hits plus the Stairmaster is enough, and this has got to be the writing on the wall. It kind of was getting there. Oh, no. Oh, no. This... We get 2 oh no's. One is, you get the block here to lock stuff off, although admittedly Klepto's a lob. It prevents the Smother Mother. It removes the trap, but there was a trap here under the Crushmore. A big old womp womp. Wait a second. Was there? Now that this is on there, it'll never show properly. Okay, so there... It looked for a second like there was a trap to the top as well. So why did this trap activate then? Maybe I misunderstood, but I thought that if you placed an obstacle like this on a trap, it deactivated the trap. It may actually activate the trap, and then in the case of most other traps, they only hit that singular hex. But similar to Baba Yaga, the Fire Ant trap is an AoE, as we saw previously, so that means that this actually ignited the Crushmore as well. As I was looking at it, I'm like, wait a minute, why didn't Chuck get hit with it if there was a trap to the north? So we ultimately see the Crushmore go down, but I don't know that it really matters. We get the Smother Mother repositioned to get into an aggressive spot against Chuck. It's going to take a little bit of damage, but, I mean, look at this. 450 health. If only our orange player had something in position to just get this panic point. We see Chuck just holding its ground. The erratic holding position, or moving into position. This is the problem. No more keys remaining for our blue player. And then, oh, the Smother Mother actually goes down. It's now Klepto, Gravedigger, and Cat versus this army. A ton of panic points, a variety of problems. No bueno. No bueno. Going to be bad news for our blue player, but very well played by our orange player. So shout out to Crazy Stripes Ram for submitting this game and for showcasing a pretty cool strategy on this map. We've talked about it a lot on the live stream, but utilizing Crushmore and Gravedigger in order to lock off these choke points, in order to create problems and headaches for your opponent, is definitely a very cool way to approach this, as we're actually approaching the very last turn. See the Gravedigger go down, and it's all over. GG. So shout out again to Crazy Stripes over here, Ram for submitting this game. We'll jump into the next one. Here we are, everyone, zoning into our second viewer game breakdown. Now, this was submitted by our blue player here, Rosaldo, who is new or newer compared to our previous game, where Crazy Stripes submitted a variety of games. We've seen them show up in Fright Night. This is a new person to the viewer game breakdown, so that's always exciting to see. So we're going to jump in here on Red Rum. In the blue corner, in our blue trunks, is our hero, Rosaldo, starting out with a stabby opener. You love to see it. Whereas the bad guy here zoning in the orange corner. Now, let's see how our orange player replies. We actually get a sheep opener, which seems like a fairly decent one. It seems like an okay response to the stabby. I mean, it kind of makes sense. It's one of those where, depending on how the positioning goes, you may end up just losing the sheep, and it's like you traded 4 keys for 3. As always, I'm not a huge fan of sheep. And in fact, we see another turret response here, and that is from Bo Mangles. So the muffin comes in. Oh no. Oh no. So this was a quick one. You can see down here, this is actually literally the last turn. I didn't notice that when we first zoned in. And yeah, that's not a 4 for 3 key trade, but a 1 for 4 key trade. And yeah, that's a pretty rough spot to come back from. And in fact, I imagine that our orange player phoned it in after that. So one thing I've mentioned before is keep your cool in Phobies. We don't know if this person, the orange player, actually quit, they disconnected, or what the case is, but even from this position, it's not impossible to come back, but yeah, sometimes the muffin is actually a killing blow. So shout out to our blue player for sending this one in. It's always funny to see one of these once in a while. Breakdown number 3 coming at you. This time it's submitted by Wheels, showing up in our orange trunks over here on the right side of Crypto, with of course the bad guy therefore in the blue trunks on the left side. Now I made it a point to check the notes that were submitted by the player for this match. After the last one, I wanted to make sure that we had more of a game to cover. And in this case we do, and no spoilers, this is a close one. So, we get a stabby opener from our blue player, which on this map, I can understand. Definitely get it on the stem, and then it can control 2 points, as you would with any other range phobie. And it allows for a fairly sturdy one, just be a turret on one of the stems. Now, conversely, our orange player elects to go with 3-1, Gravedigger to break this block and allow some more mobility both to their own stem and to just the playing field as a whole. Now the cowbell opener allows for just some early taking of points, and we have the follow-up to the stabby opener in multiple cats. It's the Mildred dream here, just, you know, without Mildred. But these cats do allow to match the panic points and then, of course, threaten the center one, because if the cowbell goes in, it's going to get annihilated, and then one of the cats can come replace it. So we get to follow up Bo Mangles so that there's an orange turret of their own, which is, of course, going to get into position fairly quickly as compared to the scenic route that Stabby had to take thanks to that Gravedigger block break. But we get the obvious thing going down, that is, we get the snipe onto the cat, but we don't see the cowbell follow-up. We don't actually see it recap. Instead, we get a bank to 6. Now, our blue player also has 7 keys available, and they expend them all for a Blastomatic. This is a big threat fairly early on in the game, and as you can see, we have a lot of more turns to go. We got a lot more turns to go. Need a sip of coffee, make sure that we're staying energized. So, cowbell does elect to go in. Gravedigger has now gone on a destruction spree, just rampaging and destroying blocks in the north part of the map. Now, clearly we get the replacement as anticipated. Because of the investment in Erratic, which makes sense given the Blastomatic, we don't have a 1-key follow-up for our orange player ready to move into the center space. So we're going to have blue control for a little bit longer. In the meantime, we get the Erratic inching up, the Bachelor in position. Now, one thing to keep in mind here, and it's part of the reason, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why people are afraid of Beauty, but Blastomatic has a similar ability in Friggin' Laser, which is if you can form a line, it's going to damage in that line. So if and when our orange player retakes the center, they're going to have to be careful of phobies that are on their stem, because they're going to get tagged. And of course, the heart is in line, so that's also going to get hit. So we do see the Blastomatic assume the stem position, and we get a follow-up sheep because it's everybody's favorite answer to erratic. Now, the Contortio follow-up here makes sense. Our blue player is positioning fairly well. They have a lot of advantages for themselves here. They have a fair... Whoa, that's pretty cool. This wasn't on purpose, but we get the Contortio so that it'll follow up to retake the center. We have 2 different turret-esque characters in order to annihilate whatever steps onto the center, and of course the sheep in order to shoo away the erratic. Plus, of course, we have 2 panic points blue. You can't see the orange one because of this, whatever's about to happen, which means that our orange player has to... They have to do something. The impetus is on them to act, and we get a follow-up Hevo here. Now, this puts our orange player at 5 Phobies. They're not going to be able to supplement. Something's going to have to go before they're able to summon another Phobie. Now, that's kind of expected, given that you have the Bachelor. It's not going to be long for this world. The sheep actually retreats, as does the Contortio. I'm a little surprised by the Contortio retreat. It would be a somewhat questionable dive from our orange player in order to eliminate it. The sheep makes more sense so that way the Hevo can't necessarily soften it up. We're getting some repositioning here. The sheep is just honoring the erratic. And then we get... Shout out to my Baba Haha fans. For that inside joke, hit up the Random Slots Discord. Which, by the way, if you want to get your games reviewed, you also got to hit up the Random Slots Discord. So check it out in the video description. Or come by the live stream. But we get the Baba Yaga follow-up, which I kind of like. You're in an advantageous position as the blue player. You can lay down some traps, make it very dicey for your opponent to commit in, especially after they utilize this Bachelor. Now, we get the great repositioning here, so that way we can get set up for the inevitable retaking of the center from our blue player, and of course dodging the laser, as mentioned earlier. Now, the Bachelor dimensional pull is somewhat irrelevant, because clearly it's going to get annihilated by the Blastomatic, and therefore it can just walk back after the first hit. The Contortio comes in. The Baba Yaga trap is interesting. I'm not really surprised that it went down there, although I almost would have rather have seen it go down onto the center point. But this is not unreasonable. It's entirely possible that our orange player will advance to the spot at some stage, especially given that the sheeping gas is here, but it is also on the stem, or healing spot, so it's not going to do much. We do see the Contortio go down. I know, shocker, everybody's stunned that actually occurred. And we get the boom follow-up, presumably just a recap. So our orange player is trying to play it very patiently, but they're now down to just under 3,400 health on their heart. The damage is adding up, even with only a 2-to-1 panic point advantage. So AWOL here is a follow-up to honor, of course, the 1 key from our orange player. But one thing that we can say is in favor of our orange player is that they have more keys. So as long as they have 2 more 1-drops, they will be able to, win out in the 1-drop war, because there will only be 1 follow-up 1-drop from our blue player at most. And of course, collection constraints could influence both of those scenarios. But we see the friggin' laser go down. A lot of this is just kind of perfunctory. We know what's going to happen. But instead of a 1-drop and fighting that battle, we see a follow-up Miss Moffat, which is pretty bold. But oh no. Oh no. This is rough, because Baba Yaga's trap, if you weren't aware, is an AoE. So it actually tags the erratic as well as the Hevo. Now, neither of them are super vulnerable, but that's damage you absolutely did not want to take. And it's possible, because I was going to say Hevo. Blastomatic is an AoE attack. The sheep can get here. The Baba Yaga can move in. This is still representing a significant amount of damage. Potentially, anyway. But the sheep actually repositions because it wants to be able to connect with the erratic, and we see a trap go down instead of an attack on the Hevo. I'm not super sold on that. I feel like I'd rather just take the damage now, force your opponent to retreat, go to their healing spa or something. But we get the yoink from the Miss Moffat. The Miss Moffat yoink goes down and is going to lead to a very, very dead sheep. We do ultimately get the retreat from the Hevo to the healing spa, which may be why our blue player just elected to lay down the trap. It's like, well, they're going to retreat anyway, so what's the point of putting the damage? But that, at 560 damage per attack, that's another cycle of healing to make up for that damage. So we ultimately see the takedown there on the sheep. That frees up Erratic to have a lot more mobility. You don't have to worry about dancing around it. But at the end of the day, this Blastomatic now has friggin' laser back online. It's almost another 900 damage, 899 in fact. So if you step on the center point to reclaim it, guess what? Something's getting lit up. And that something is your heart. And that's not much health left. So we see the aggressive Bowmangles push, followed up by an Erratic push. Now the Erratic is going to be able to splash here, but this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hits. And remember, this is doing a lot. Like, this is a dead Erratic. But we do have an orange panic point advantage due to the Erratic sacrifice. Now, did this have to happen? Obviously, it probably would have been ideal to instead have, or a better option to have the Gravedigger here, but you wouldn't have gotten the splash onto the Stabby, so it's not likely you're able to take it down. Oh no. 173 health on this heart. But we do have triple orange panic points. Kind of has to be, because otherwise you risk just a random retake and the game is over. So, for example, here, if our orange player did not, this is a good heads-up play, did not take this, and this was blue, the game is now over. But it was a good heads-up play, like I said. So, they're able to stick into this game. They take down the Bachelor. They're probably going to take down this Baba Yaga. I didn't double-check the damage. They're not going to do it. Ooh. Okay, yes. They had a second attack from the Spider. So, now it's Blastomatic against this entire team, although there was a trap up here that we missed. Or no, it wasn't a trap, excuse me. Baba Yaga's dimensional. Baba Yaga takedown. Since friggin' laser is not up, yes, things will get blown up, but at this point, our orange player could retreat, they could push aggressively. It looks like they're going to stick in. Oh no, they're not. They're just going to take the pot shot and back off. Now, they do probably want to stay in range of the center point like this, so that way, if the Blastomatic advances, they have a chance to beat up on it. You just have to be careful so that you don't get blown up by another laser to your heart. And of course, you have to continue to guard all of these points. Now, that isn't actually all that challenging, although I kind of made it sound a little more dramatic. The reason it's not all that challenging is this Blastomatic is just not that fast. Now, I probably would have not brought the Bowmangles in this way. I would have played it more defensively, just to shoo away the Blastomatic. But the Blastomatic's at low health, and now, because this game has dragged on so long and just chip damage, and now all of a sudden you have Bowmangles on this stim, 1900 health on the blue heart. We actually see the Blastomatic finish off the Hevo, but this is a stimmed up Bowmangles. That is a wild clown just going ham on the heart. And just like that, the orange player takes it down. Shout out to Wheels. Thank you for submitting this game. This was absolutely a close one. You were 100% correct. The close game moniker or title in the review screen, in the profile game screen, yeah, this one's pretty accurate. This one was pretty good. So we're going to jump into the next game breakdown. All right, everyone, jumping into the next game breakdown, we move to yet another map similar to Phobopolis that is kind of causing some grimaces among the community, and that is the floor is lava. A very aggressive map and a very tightly compact map with our hero here in the blue trunks, Antdude. Now, in the orange trunks is our bad guy going second, which is a unenviable position on floor is lava. We'll see what our blue player does to make their life difficult. Now, we get a somewhat non-standard opening in Murderwing, not capping any points, but instead going aggressively to this northern obstacle. Now, the follow-up from our orange player is more standard. We get a cat, we get a Bowmangles. It could be a Stabby, it could have been an Unbearable minus the cat, but we get a turret that's moving towards the center. To supplement the Murderwing is a Stabby. We get our own turret from our hero here, and then actually a retreat from the Murderwing, which makes sense because otherwise that is exceptionally exposed. Now, the disadvantage of this particular opener chosen by our blue player is that you aren't capping a lot of these points. Why does that matter? Well, on this map, as mentioned, it's very aggressive, and you can push a lot of damage through the panic points. So, if you're not leveraging that early on, you're kind of giving up one of the advantages of going first and pressuring your opponent. It makes your opponent's life as the orange player exceptionally more complex because they're forced into certain responses to combat an aggressive opening, and you get to dictate the flow of the game. But it seems to be, doing okay so far, even though we're about to see orange take over a number of panic points. So we get the retreat from the Murder Wing as mentioned. The Stabby's going to move into position. We get a Cassowary to follow up in order to cap this particular point. Now, the Cassowary may not be long for this world. Between the Murder Wing and the Bowmangles, it is entirely possible that this Cassowary just gets burned down. But thanks to the Meatball hit, this Bowmangles is not nearly as sturdy as one might think. It's under 800 health. So it does need to get out of there if it plans on living. But it looks like our orange player is more than willing to sacrifice it. It actually pumps 2 hits into the Stabby, and then we get a follow-up Spud, one of my favorite Phobies. So the Spud here is a lobber, and it will allow it to threaten this Stabby down here on this point. But we get a Clinico follow-up. You hate to see it when you're on the other side of the board. It's like, oh, I'm finally going to get rid of that Stabby. Yeah, funny story, that's not happening. So once again, we get Meatball pot shots onto orange Phobies in conjunction with the Stabby. That's a dead Spud. That's just 3 keys incinerated, and that's got to feel bad, because this is an onboard trick, especially if you have beaten up this Stabby, right? You beat up the Stabby. Your opponent's likely to back it off unless they choose to stay and kill it, and maybe that's what our orange player was thinking, that they're just going to, man fight the Stabby into Bowmangles, but ultimately the Bowmangles still remains mangled, and the Spud goes down. Now, we get the Answer Clinico, which allows our orange player to stabilize the health of the Bowmangles. And then we get an aggressive cat push to flip the panic points in favor of blue. Because we have an even number of panic points on this map, it means it's actually a 2 panic point advantage when you steal one in the 3-3 situation. So the Cassowary Leap and the Gin Sting hit allows for the cat to go down. Shocker, it wasn't going to last very long. But now this Murder Wing is kind of out of position. It's either going to die. If it stays, it's got no real place to be valuable, so it's got to retreat. The Bowmangles and Stabby slap fight continues, but this time Bowmangles has elected to actually pull back because it's not going to sustain through this. This Stabby is 1100 health. This is now down to 758. Granted, some of that was from the reflective damage. But despite the Clinico hit, or the Clinico juice, zap, I guess? It does zap it. We'll say Clinico zap. It's still not quite enough to maintain this Bowmangles. So, despite being down on panic points, our blue player does have an advantage from a Phobie position. Now, that part of that is because they have all 5 slots consumed, which is a little questionable. We've talked about that on many occasions, locking yourself out. Our orange player had banked to 6. I wanted to double check the Cassowary health. This is a fairly healthy team aside from, by fairly, I mean very, aside from the Stabby. And we get, out of the 6 keys from our orange player, we actually get a Bees hit here from Gin Sting. I don't know about that one. The problem here is, so you'll get a Meatball hit and a retreat. Then you could probably get the Stabby advance, and you can't really kill, like, it's going to be awkward to kill this Stabby. But instead, we get the aggressive Cassowary push, plus Bees of our own as the blue player, leads to a dead Bowmangles, and then this is about to be a dead Murder Wing. Oh, we get the follow-up heal. This is just insult to injury. And then that whacks the Gin Sting. Now, it's entirely possible that a couple things from our blue player are going to go down here, but this is a very strong position and a very difficult one to try and fight back from with only 5 keys. In fact, we get the Hevo, but if the Hevo advances anywhere, it's going to get laid into. Will it die? No, not likely, because Leap is down. Can't click on this Cassowary. The Leap is down, so you could have repositioned aggressively, but I don't even know that that would get you anything. So instead, we get a Clinico invade, a little bit of repositioning here, so that we get some more flexibility, and a Smother Mother follow-up. Our blue player's out of keys, but they are full of panic points. Or the panic points are full of our blue player. I don't really know how that works. But regardless, we see a lot of blue, and we see a very threatened heart. And in fact, we see a concession come down from our orange player, which truthfully, with only 3 keys remaining, yeah, Yeah, I can kind of see it. This is pretty well played by our blue player. I really liked a lot of the ways that they positioned. They were able to capitalize on the mistakes from our orange player. The opening was a little strange, but it ended up working out, so I'm going to have to keep this one in mind for the next time that I'm on Floor's Lava. So shout out to Antdude for submitting this game, thank you, and we're going to jump into the next one. Alright, here we are zoning into Red Room, one of my least favorite maps, but it is a popular one among other players. So we'll see how this one plays out. Our hero here is actually starting in the orange trunks, down in the bottom right corner, it's Sivadas. So our bad guy here is starting out with a unicorn into Sarkassin. This is interesting, but before we really get into the game proper, there were some notes, and it's indicated that our hero here was playing against a higher level opponent, higher level Phobies, but they were able to pressure even after they summoned a Blastomatic and a big alligator. And that Thunder Rocks may have been part of the MVP for this game, even maybe if it doesn't show on the actual MVP title screen. And we have kind of a spectacular finish, so let's see if we can get to that finish. Now, this opener here is reminiscent of the Stabby opener because you get this pseudo turret character, it'll lay down traps. A lot of the action happens in this center spot, quite obviously, on this map. So as a result, laying down a multitude of traps could represent a big threat to our orange player. But in addition to the unicorn, we also get a actual turret character in Mangles, who is going to be able to move up and then likely cover multiple panic points. Honestly, I would have liked to have seen it sooner, because then getting to this point next to the heart, this hex next to the heart, allows it to cover this spot that was taken by our orange Sarkassin, as well as the center point. But ultimately, we had a slightly different opener. So we get a follow-up Stabby. We're matching turret for turret here. And as one might expect, we in fact do see the trap go down onto the center point. Now, this unicorn, due to its low movement, is still in range of the Sarkassin, but that's really just getting repositioned. This Stabby, though, is aggressively positioned, so it is possible that obviously if the spider goes in and poisons it, it's going to die. And it's entirely possible the Stabby makes it out. So positioning forward like this isn't actually too bad. You know, you're not too worried about it, because the Stabby is not likely to die from that poison. You could, of course, follow up with a Clinico, but now, due to vacating the topmost point, we get Mangles filling in and reclaiming it. The spider here actually kills off the spider, and we don't even bother with the healing spa. It's in fact actually a Clinico. So the Stabby moves on up and now is able to cover multiple panic points. While the Murder Wing could pop over, we could get a collapse from these other turrets. It's probably not enough damage, Meatball, hit, and hit, because they're only going to get one each, to take down the Stabby. But now, this might put it in danger. So this is a 1700 health Stabby. We're looking at 5. This is a level 9 Mangles. It's going to be 545 from the trap. It's almost 400 from the unicorn alone. And then, of course, we have a level 9 Murder Wing. So this is a lot of damage that's going to come down on the Stabby. It's not long for this world, most likely. Now, I can kind of understand the aggressive advance here from our orange player, especially if they either didn't consider or, didn't care about the trap. There's an argument that the blue player cannot eliminate both of these. I could count it up. We're not going to. It's more fun this way. But we do get a Klepto follow-up, which is in range of the Mangles. Now, it's target rich. But you can't get all of these. You're not going to get the Stabby, the Klepto. Well, I don't think there's any way you can get the Klepto anyway. But we do see the dead Murder Wing. We see some hits going down onto the Stabby, including a follow-up Meatball. And I assume there's a jar in our future? Okay, never mind. The Unicorn just finishes it off. Now, the Unicorn trades, but I think you take that trade. Now we have the aforementioned Alligator follow-up. But the Alligator and the remainder of the blue team need to recap a whole bunch of panic points. The Spider is able to connect, and why does this matter? Although it doesn't completely negate the poison, that is, doesn't completely negate the healing from Regatorate, it does put a lot of, or maybe not a lot, but additional pressure on the Alligator, so it's not just an enormous pile of hit points that you can never actually punch through. So which landmine is this? This is Kerbloom. It's the 2-cost, which also features a pushback. So this is kind of interesting, especially since it's swinging north. I guess the assumption here is that that our blue player would try and recap this point with Bowmangles, maybe? Which they do ultimately choose to do. Now, this means it's 1,300 health Bowmangles. It's not going to die. Actually, it will. This thing's dead. If our blue player wants to, the Klepto is going to slide up, the Kerbloom goes up here, and that's a dead Bowmangles. It won't recap the point, but, I mean, you're removing Bowmangles, so that's fine. Our blue player is actually down to a mere 8 keys, whereas we only have 7 for our orange player. The other hilarious part about this is not only is the Bowmangles dead, but the Clinico can slide up and recap this point because the Kerbloom provides that pushback, gets it off the panic point. So that was a strong play from our orange player here. The follow-up is Gin Sting. It's not going to die to a hit from Alligator and a hit from Murder Wing. So it can position aggressively here and try and push things away. In the meantime, we get a retreat from Alligator, finally cure that poison. You could probably tank through it, but you know, we get rid of the poison now. And Blastomatic is the phobia of choice along with a Newly Dead, and that's it as far as keys go. So this is why we're probably going to see the pseudo MVP in Thunder Rocks. Thunder Rocks advances and is going to be able to... How high of a level is this Thunder Rocks? This is a level 6 Thunder Rock, so it's not doing a ton, but it's 800 damage a clip. Like, that's pretty good if it can connect on this level 7 Blastomatic with 3,400 health and change. It's pretty solid. It's pretty solid. And once again, we see all the panic points go orange. This is a lot of pressure onto our blue player at this stage. Now, the Gin Sting here is going to take a beating, but the Gin Sting is also going to live because it's only, quote-unquote, only 3 hits, Alligator and then 2 Murder Wing hits. We get somewhat of a defensive posture. Oh, no. The traps are real. So we had the kill going down. Now, this is a somewhat aggressive invade by the Thunder Rocks. It needs to get into position, and that's the thing about Thunder Rocks, is that it is fairly tanky. It kind of has to be, because otherwise it's never going to do its job. It's melee, right? But this Gin Sting is going to go down, and despite the Clinico heal, the Clinico heal keeps it alive from the trap at least, but we get AoE from the Blastomatic in conjunction with hits from the rest of the team that's going to ultimately lead to its demise. But again, not to be a broken record, but the blue player is under a lot of pressure. Like, look at this. They're at 1,100 health. We're actually going to see a dive from our orange player, which absolutely makes sense. It absolutely makes sense. You get the lob here. You get the hits from Thunder Rocks. They're like sad 200 and change. And then the hits from the panic points, and you take it down. The tempo was absolutely on our orange player's side through the majority of the match, and they played from the bully position very well. Never gave our blue player an opportunity to really flip things back, and definitely allowed themselves, or provided themselves every opportunity to close this game out. So, shout out to our orange player, and thank you for submitting this game. We're going to jump into the next one. And away we go. We're into Biff's room, and our hero here spawning in the blue trunks is Fluffybunnie. Whereas the bad guy up here, of course, is zoning in on the orange half and is staring down a 3-key opener on Biff's room. That is Cowbell, Razormouth, and, of course, Boom. I say of course, but how often do you see Boom at the start? Now, this is pretty aggressive. Obviously, our blue player is intending on claiming all of this very quickly. Now, there are some notes that I'll read off after the game for this one, but we get just simply a Razormouth follow-up from our orange player in order to cap this point. This actually, believe it or not, kind of puts a damper on this particular opening because you don't really have the positioning unless you want to sacrifice this Boom to eliminate the cat. And honestly, I could kind of see doing that just to clear stuff off the board. But instead, we have a continual bank from our orange player to match the bank from our blue player. So it's 6 keys to 8 keys. And we actually see the boom sacrifice itself in order to eliminate the Bachelor instead. Now, these two Phobies, this is a little odd. So this cat is... Oh, I paused at the bad spot. This cat is 708 health. You can't quite get it with these, so there's no point in invading. I don't know, I feel like eliminating the cat earlier would have been beneficial, but we'll see how this plays out. We actually get a boss follow-up here. Those 8 keys were well invested, so while our orange player is down in panic points and arguably down in phobie count, I mean, they are on the count, but the quality is clearly in the orange player's favor. And an early boss like this can absolutely take over a game. Now, we see a fetch follow-up to supplement the Gesundheit that we got last turn, which is kind of cool. The repositioning here could be pretty big, but I'm curious, like, we'll have to see if there's a specific game plan that our blue player has in mind for fetch, because the pushback here, I'm not sure about. I think this just may be, it's almost 700 damage a hit in order to try and take down this 26, almost 2,700 health boss. So we get a retreat from our blue player, get some repositioning going. Now, okay, they do split these. I was going to say, the problem here is that this means that the boss will be able to do its splash and hit these, but we've yet to see another phobie hit the board in orange trunks. So we have 6 keys banked. It's going to be a Gesundheit, and what else are they going to do? The reason this is notable is that there aren't a whole lot of phobies on the board to recap these points, and while, yes, you're only taking 225 damage a turn, you still have 5,000 health, it's going to be a while, but at a certain point you do want to try and manipulate the board position in your favor. But instead, we get the boss getting the AoE going down on Quagmire and Fetch. Both of them are going to be able to heal, so it's not too big of a deal. Quagmire naturally, and of course the Life Leech from Fetch. And we get a Murder Wing follow-up, so that's all 5 slots for phobies filled by our blue player. Now at this point, we have triple blue panic point advantage, and this is where it kind of gets scary. It's not necessarily, oh, I need to flip the panic points 2-to-1 in favor of me over my opponent. The problem is if they have the 2-to-1 advantage, they can suddenly make it a 3-to-0 advantage, and then that clock gets a lot faster. A lot faster. So, how do they respond? In this case, we get Hevo 2.0, laying down some heat onto the Fetch, reposition from Gesundheit, and shots from boss going down. Now, the boss at this stage is untouched. All of the orange phobies are untouched. Whereas this Fetch, cooked. Not quite cooked, but it's a little crispy. We'll say it's a little crispy at this stage. So the Fetch is going to go in. We get a reposition from this Cowbell, but the Cowbell's not going to be able to do it. Oh, I take it back. This is a great boop. Hold on, we got to look at this. Without me talking over it, we got to look at this boop. This is a cool boop. This is a great setup, so hold on. Why is this a great setup? Because if you just boop this, it's going to push it back and out of range of everything. But this boop, because of the body block from Cowbell, oh, this is beautiful. This is beautiful. You gotta love it. You love to see it. The Cowbell body blocks it, so therefore the Cowbell actually gets to get a hit. You get a bunch of hits from everything else. And this was... I have to imagine... Well, that's a weird pause. I have to imagine that our blue player first thought, oh yeah, I gotta go in and kill this phobie. But you don't have to. Ironically, the boss's own fire, he's fired. The boss fired himself. Which means that this panic point stays blue. Now, the Fetch goes down in exchange, but truthfully, like, that's the thing you cared about. You needed to get rid of that boss. Now, there still is a Hevo 2.0 and now a veritable armada of biological warfare here with Gesundheit and Microscopic. But you still have a panic point advantage, and 25-25. That orange heart is not looking spectacular. 6 keys to 3 keys remaining, and we get the erratic as the finisher from our blue player. It's going to take some time for it to get into appropriate position, but you do have some time. Excuse me. Because the Hevo is really the only 2-move phobie, And the rest of the team, especially now with Bowmangles, is single move. This is a little weird. I'm also unsure. So the boop is online. The way I picture this is you need to, as the orange player, I don't think the Bowmangles is what you wanted. I definitely don't think the microscopic was. But you needed a larger set of low-key phobies in order to try and reclaim these points. Give you some more map mobility. And you also need to buy time, so maybe booping here is worth it. Push some damage on this. You know, you're doing the same amount of damage, but it gets the erratic out of the way. This would allow you to possibly advance one of these. Not really. But if you advance both, then you can try and trade back. I don't know. This is not looking good for our orange player. So we get the invade from Murder Wing. It goes down onto microscopic. Quagmire is verging on invulnerable here. And we get a takedown, and all of a sudden, this army from our orange player is not long for this world. The erratic's in position. They're controlling the panic points. It's going to be very challenging for our orange player to make anything happen. Now, they do have a boop available, so it's entirely possible that they're able to make something happen. Wait, where did this land on? I wanted to see this boop. It landed on the erratic. I guess there's no way you're killing Quagmire, so they figured that the damage didn't matter. And I guess you're not killing the Murder Wing either. I don't know, that seems interesting. But, as mentioned, this is not a great position to be fighting from, so it could be a little bit of frustration, a little bit of tilt. But as a result of that boop pushing everything away, we can get the retreat from the Murder Wing, we can get the retreat from the Quagmire, who it's going to take an eternity for this stuff to close on it. And you clearly can't dive with the Hevo. Now that the boop is offline, it's going to be very challenging for our orange player to actually make much of anything happen. They do have a little bit of life to play with, although they are getting low, 1100 health. You have one or two more turns. Really one. 2 turns would have been at the start of it, but now this is bad. Now suddenly those turns are gone. Those turns are gone because this is a triple blue panic point advantage. Yes, the Murder Wing will go down, but that doesn't really matter. What matters is that these panic points are, or were, blue and pushing that much damage, because now we're looking at 275 health on the heart. That's a rough spot. You can't give up a panic point ever. But in fact, we are going to see panic points go orange. I think Boop is back online for this Hevo, although it's, on the opposite side of the map, so it doesn't really matter. And we're going to get an elimination, a recap, and the end of our orange player. This was very well played. This is very well played, pushing the advantages where they had them, not allowing your opponent to induce panic by producing very high cost and very dangerous phobies early in the game on a small map. But you see the disadvantage of putting all of your eggs into boss. That's weird. It's not quite how the saying goes, but all of the keys into boss, all of the keys into Hevo, and going very tall isn't necessarily going to be a winning game plan every time. So shout out to fluffybunnie, grats on the win, and we'll jump into the next game breakdown. And here we are back on Crypto. We have a game submitted by our hero here in the orange trunks, Sormor. And the bad guy, who we have to give a shout out to because of this sweet beauty avatar, is zoning in on the blue side with your somewhat standard Gravedigger opening. Now, it was indicated in the notes for this game that it was a close game that could have gone either way up until the last few turns when a few key plays were made. So I'm excited to see what we get from this one. We'll see how our beauty avatar player here does. But we get, as mentioned, a somewhat fairly standard opener. And Sormor also indicated that they tend to catch the YouTube videos, so shout out to all the YouTube viewers out there. If you're enjoying this and you want to get your own games on stream or on YouTube, then jump on over to the Random Thoughts Discord. Likes and subscribes here on this video always help. Seriously, they do. But we get a response of banking some keys by going to, or excuse me, we don't, because I missed this Gesundheit. This guy was blending in here. We get a sneaky Gesundheit coming out. So we actually see all 4 keys expended from our orange player. Gesundheit is interesting. It can't quite fly over the heart because you can't rest on the heart, so it has to take the scenic route here. Therefore, it doesn't get onto the panic point as quick, but it does pour out a lot of damage pretty well. So, you know. We get an invade from the remaining Phobies because of this somewhat slower movement-wise opener from our blue player. It allowed our orange player to take an early panic point advantage. By advantage, I mean all 3 panic points are orange. They all have that orange color, and they're pumping out a bunch of damage. Now, as a result, as the cost, at what cost did these panic points come? Well, the cost is that you're going to lose 2 keys worth of Phobies. Now, although our blue player is able to eliminate those Phobies, they can't quite reclaim any of them just yet. So we have the Suck Acid go in. It's able to poison this Gravedigger. Honestly, I don't know if that's necessary. The reason I say that is you're going to hemorrhage another key. So you've now lost 3 keys for freezies, basically. Now, granted, this Gravedigger will go down as a result of this poison. It can't, well, I guess hypothetically, it could heal through it. Yeah, it's not actually going to take it down. Not quite, I don't think. I'm not counting that up, because I don't care. But it's going to be very vulnerable. If something looks at it funny, it's probably going to die. And we have the follow-up cat from blue player in order to recap and at least stem the bleeding a little bit. The Gin Sting follow-up means that we're not just recapping the point as the orange player, but the Gesundheit is able to snipe the center point recap, and then it actually leaves. It actually leaves, which is a little interesting. Why did they leave on this turn? Like, it didn't... This has to be moving to set up for next turn, possibly to try and recap the center point with Gesundheit, which would be interesting. But we do get a Poison Ivy, which is a phobia you don't commonly see. It was introduced in a patch after launch, which, by the way, part of the reason we're doing all these reviews offline is because there's a patch coming. Patches have in the past broken replays, and I'm hoping in this patch we get some new phobies, but we don't know that yet. Anyway, Poison Ivy here is another trap phobia as compared to Venus, who's only 1 move. This is 2 move, but of course you don't get quite as much damage output. Some of it relies on poison, and it costs more. But now we finally see the panic point swing in blue's favor, and we get my favorite play, the lockdown here with Gravedigger in order to seal off this bottom point. Now we can still hit it with bees. So that little bit of damage that's necessary may still... This should be enough to still eliminate this Gravedigger. Yep. It's still going to go down to poison. And we actually get a Miss Moffat, which I kind of like on this map. It can be difficult to leverage if you don't break enough of the obstacles with your Gravedigger or Mount Crushmore in order to get the angles you want. Otherwise, you end up standing on lava, or you can't quite reach it, or a variety of different problematic scenarios. But this means that our orange player can't really invade, has to get something else going. And that something else is Boo Fairy, which is kind of cool. Boo Fairy is the big power down, like the big power down. We're looking at 708 damage output as well as a 708 damage power down. That actually almost entirely shuts off Stabby when it's on the stim. That's how much power down that is. I mean, it's still going to be doing some damage. And if you were to invade, I mean, the pull, the attack, the attacks, the attacks, the attacks, it's still probably, maybe not going to die. I'd have to count it. And as always, we're not counting. It's more fun not to count. But the Gin Sting position means that it is still susceptible to jar, and this statue's still alive, so it is protected, in fact, from getting hit. We could get a little bee action going, but I don't think that's what we're going to see here. In fact, I think it's on cooldown. That's mostly the reason I said it. Just throwing it out there. Actually, I'm completely wrong. Bees was not on cooldown. We will get a little bees action into the retreat. So that softens up the jar, meaning that a later bees... Well, later bees won't quite get it. Later Bs won't quite get it, but it's softened up enough that other things, like a single hit from most Phobies, should eliminate it. So we now see the spider pull go down. And we're going to try and see a takedown here, I guess, on the Poison Ivy, who may or may not have laid a trap at this stage. We don't see it, unfortunately. Sometimes the replays aren't great about showing it. But to combat the Boo Fairy, we actually see Scritch, who I haven't seen in a while. I saw a lot of Scritch when well, maybe not when I first started playing, but maybe the second season. And Scritch has kind of fallen off. I've seen more Gonzo Bonzos, and I kind of like that more. But Gonzo Bonzo's not here, so that's not really important. We actually see a full 5 Phobies, and the battle lines are drawn. We have a Miss Moffat and a Bachelor on the side of our orange player, whereas we have a more formidable set of Phobies on our blue player side, given the low point of the Bachelor. But even though we have 5 Phobies from our blue player, this Bachelor is A, not long for the world, and oh, by the way, neither player has any keys. So we see a great repositioning here to try and get something set up. There's the threat of the orange pull from Miss Moffat, and I think that pull is going to need to come down pretty quickly before the blue one goes online. Well, actually, the blue one's already back online, so never mind. So once again, we're getting repositioning. Both players have to dance around the fact that at any point, anything that they leave even slightly overextended is going to get yoinked and then a takedown. But here's the big thing. Because we don't have any other small Phobies, no keys left for our blue player, they are going to need to commit, quote-unquote, real Phobies from here on out in order to reclaim this panic point, because now it has swung orange, which is kind of how this map plays out. If you're in one of these positions, you have to make the best of it. Now we see a power-up going down on Stabby here, which ultimately results in a Boo Fairy takedown, which has gotta feel bad. Now, there's not a whole lot of positions that you could have been. Ooh, so that's where the trap was. There was, in fact, a trap. It goes down onto Miss Moffat, and ironically, the poisonous spider, the venomous spider, is poisoned. That allows for a little bee action to splash onto all of these, eliminate the murder wing, and then we see a takedown on the opposing spider. But this is still, you could say, even. The problem is, as mentioned, our orange player has the advantage on the panic point, so that means that blue has to do something. It is incumbent on them to make something happen. Our orange player can sit back and allow the panic points to take course and just close the game out on their behalf. Whether they elect to do that is another story. But it looks like they are going to play a little more defensively. They, of course, have the pull to make it even more awkward for our blue player. But the Boo Fairy sacrifice seems to have served its purpose. Whether that was an intentional sacrifice and therefore a bait or not, I'm not sure. Honestly, I think that the choice of keys kind of led to this scenario, as I keep repeating it, but the inability to pump out smaller key Phobies, thereby protecting your more important ones, has made this very complex for our blue player. And even this scenario, the only way that this plays out positively for blue here is if orange forgets about the pull or chooses to do something else weird. So in this case, we're actually seeing the aggressive play onto the Scritch. Get a little bees action with the spread. And then the lava takes care of the Scritch so you don't have to worry about the dimensional death effect. Now the Gesundheit will go down because it is also on lava. But the problem is that this Stabby is not going to be able to kill the rest of this team, namely the remaining team. And we move into our final turn. The heart is very low. We get a little bees action to finish off the jar. And this is going to be an orange player victory. So shout out to Sormor. Thank you for submitting this game. This was really cool and very tight. The dances between the two Moffats, you know, the deadly dance of the spiders, and the dancing between the other Phobies is definitely very interesting. I think this was very well played. So shout out to Sormor. But we're going to jump into the next game breakdown. Once more into the Phobopolis. Here we have a game submitted by our hero here in the blue trunks, NekoKawaii, and we have a fairly aggressive opener at that, so we'll break that down momentarily, but we have our bad guy here spawning in on the orange side of Phobopolis, and I'm curious how they're going to respond to this 4-key opener, Cat, Henrietta, and Maggie. Now, we've broken down the map before on stream. You can check that out in stream highlights. Check out the playlist here on YouTube. But the Flyers are able to easily cap this point. The Henrietta here, though, is kind of cute because then it threatens, say, a Murder Wing or Maggie follow-up from our orange player. Droney would be immune, but Droney is also weak enough that multiple hits from the Henrietta, not that that would happen next turn, but possibly, could eliminate it. And this aggressive opener means that if you don't respect this, then the Henrietta just goes in and claims the point. So this is pretty cool. I like this. So we'll see how our orange player responds to this particular opening salvo. The Cat opener makes sense. We get our own Henrietta, and then a Maggie who is unafraid for a little bug-on-bug violence. This Maggie is going to get poisoned, I assume, and it's not really worth the heal. Like, are you really going to Clinico this? Probably not. Now, this poison will take a few turns, so that means that the Maggie is still mobile, is still valuable, and I kind of expect that the Maggie is just going to beeline. See, get it? It's a bug pun. It's going to run to the center point. I'm going to laugh at my own jokes. Anyway, so the Cat reclaims the middle, and we see a 3-2 panic point advantage, which is possibly somewhat disappointing compared to how aggressive the opener possibly was. But the orange Henrietta is able to, I guess, return the favor, poison the Cat, and then now make it 3-2 going the other way. Now, the Maggie is going to go down soon, as mentioned, but a Stairmaster's in position to try and lock down the center point, and the Henrietta's got to go. Henrietta's got to go. Now, this is a little bit dangerous for the Stairmaster, because while Stairmaster is a threat at 605 damage output, it's somewhat of a glass cannon. So, hypothetically, this Maggie's going to go in, deal 500 here, the Gin Sting can go in, but this Cat's in the way. So, the Gin Sting, ooh, they're actually pulling the Cat back. They're pulling the Cat back. So, the Stairmaster is exposed to a degree. It's not going to die. I was pointing it out mostly because there is value, hypothetically, in leaving the Cat there to defend. Now, if the Maggie goes in, it can recap the point, hit the Stairmaster, and body block for the Gin Sting. But instead, the Gin Sting is going to come down and try and eliminate the blue Maggie. This is pretty violent so far. We've seen a lot of Phobies action already. It's not a lot of dancing, not a lot of positioning, it's just getting in there and mixing it up. So we see a 4-1 panic point advantage to our orange player temporarily until this poison Cat reclaims the top. And then we actually now see it completely flipped in the other direction. Due to the choke points here, well, never mind that point. Never mind the choke points, because we may not have a choke point anymore. We may have a wall in the very near future, because this Crushmore could just seal this off. We'll see if that ultimately happens. We get a follow-up Contortio, because that's going to likely just recap some of these points that are going to be given up. And the jar all the way from our orange player in the top corner feels very lonely, because it can't safely traverse this way. It's going to have to swing behind unless there's a way to shoo away the Stairmaster. Oh no. 1, 2. This Stairmaster could aggressively invade. It'll probably die if it does, so I don't think that's worth it. But we do see the defensive jar, or the jar play defensively, pulling back. In fact, everything is pulling back defensively as Blinky tries to stem some of the bleeding and change panic points 3-2. So just like we saw in an earlier game, we're starting to see a construction site take form. In fact, Crushmore does block off this choke. So now, this panic point is mostly safe. It's possible that a flyer comes out of our orange player, but this is going to be difficult to siege for obvious reasons. You have to clear out the statue. The Crushmore has lob. It's just going to be a big threat. And I guess the idea was enticing enough that our orange player kind of wants to try it on their own as well. But our blue player has the opportunity to respond. our blue player has the opportunity to respond. Now, the Stairmaster staying in the south, which, by the way, it also kind of locks the Stairmaster to a degree, because the Stairmaster come all the way around. Yes, it's like 1.5 extra moves, but that's 1.5 extra moves if they want to swing the Stairmaster to the north. The Stairmaster does push out a lot of damage, so it can burn through the statue rather quickly, but it still has to do that. And the jar comes down in order to harass the Stairmaster. Now, it's possible... Oh, we actually see a different play from our orange player. Instead of electing to lock down this top point, they actually destroy the obstacle so that way they can get this Jin Sting into position, which is now going to be able to lay down some fire onto the Stairmaster in conjunction with the jar. So we can soften up the already somewhat soft Stairmaster, and then we get Quagmire as a follow-up. Given that the panic points, as compared to some of the other games that we've observed in this video, are not heavily in favor of one player or the other for an extended period of time, and it's a big map, we are seeing pressure on the heart, but we're still at 6,500 health and change, 7,800 health. Players aren't under an enormous amount of pressure. This is very much going to be a positioning battle for a lot of this. Now, the Jin Sting, because it was so aggressive, it looks like it's going to pay for it with its life, actually through some splash-related bees, although even if it wasn't the bees, the Crushmore could have gotten position. And now we get everything from the blue player rotating north. Just checking the notes on this. So one of the comments from the player who submitted this was the weakness of one-move Phobies. So we'll have to see, because we haven't seen too many one-movers come out just yet, but there's still at least half of a game left to play. We get some pot shots onto the remaining Phobies that are aligned here. This set of trades is kind of interesting. We'll have to see what actually goes down this turn and then count up the keys to see who's ahead, because it still seems and feels fairly even. We actually get a booper in fetch, which is fun because it's a dog, you can boop the nose. But we get, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 11 keys. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. So actually our blue player is down, technically. As well as now they are down from a panic point perspective. Let's see how they pull this back. You get the damage laid down onto Crushmore. We get some follow-up jar hits. This doesn't kill the... Ooh, what level is this jar? This is a level 7 jar, so not huge, but pretty solid. And we get the fish tank follow-up. So fish tank will allow for a lot of... Oh, no, this is beautiful. You'll love to see these boops. You'll love to see it. Now, this will consume the remaining keys for our blue player, but the boop from the fetch allows the kill on the Blinky. You love to see it. You love to see it. Now, the Bowmangles will take some time to get into the mix, but it does allow that takedown, which you could make an argument maybe it wasn't worth it tempo-wise, because now you lose your jar. You get an erratic follow-up, which consumes the remaining keys from the orange player. This still looks fairly dicey, truthfully. But we now finally see the one-move Phobies that are showing up for our orange player. And in the meantime, we get some bees action going down. We get a reposition from the fish tank so that it can wallop the Quagmire here. And then we get an advance from the remaining... the fetch. Get a little headbutt action, which pushes away the one mover. Now, it's still in range, and everything here could light up the fetch. We'll see what the orange player actually elects to do. Is this enough to kill it? Normally, I don't pause. Okay, so if they move the Stairmaster up, it will kill it. That would probably result in a dead Stairmaster. But we'll have to see how exactly are you getting out of this, because this looks real bad for our blue player. This seems real bad for our blue player. But we get the takedown on Quagmire. I mean, that's an enormous amount of damage between Bowmangles and the fish tank. Now, the fish tank has 1,900 and change left. It's still fairly sturdy, although once again, a bunch of this stuff could connect. Oh no. Not like this. So, here's the problem. This erratic is likely, and I think I see where this game is going, this erratic is probably never going to connect on the fish tank. So we have a blue panic point advantage. Is the fish tank going to be aggressive and dive the heart, or is it going to try and stay and fight? It is going to go aggressive. It actually caps this point, and now these two phobies, the erratic and the unbearable, will likely never connect with what it needs to be. So our orange player is at 5,100 health. This is only a 600 remaining health fish tank, so it's not, it's not super healthy. But we have a 4-to-1 panic point advantage, so the damage that's going down is substantial. You get a little bees action going. This is a little... Well, actually, this is fine, because the 600 health on the fish tank means that it's not going to die from a single hit. I was going to say maybe you just position it here on this back tile, but it doesn't seem to be necessary. Obviously, the Bowmangles is dead. The Gesundheit, I keep saying Gesundheit, the Ginsting is going to have to run away. Well, it can't here. So they elect to go after the fish tank. Definitely makes sense. But now you're trying to chase down this fish tank, and you may never catch it. You may never catch it. Because now we're looking at under 3k health. Oh, we actually collapse onto the unbearable, get the takedown. Oh no, and now the erratic has to start the march backwards. You're down panic points. These are both going to be able to get on the heart right now. Or you can do that and reclaim panic points. Oh, that's rough. That avenue was available, and our blue player absolutely took it. Just grabbed the victory, stuffed it in their pocket, and walked away, because I really felt that our orange player was in a pretty solid position, but they gave our blue player the opportunity in order to score a victory by getting to the heart, reclaiming these points, and leveraging the slow movement of those two particular phobies. So shout out to our blue player, and thank you for submitting this game. This was pretty cool. Whew. It's been a long one. We're jumping into another game submitted by Antdude. Now, this one specifically features Charon and actually showcases some of the power level of that particular phobia, which I know has been much maligned among the Phobies community. So I'm excited to see how it plays out in this one. So our hero here is zoning in to Scoposium in the orange trunks, whereas our bad guy here, Destructo. Normally I just say bad guy, but this is a fun name. Destructo is zoning in the blue trunks, opening with Bowmangles and a Razormouth. So let's see what we get. Now, Scoposium is one of my least favorite maps, but as I mentioned in many recent replays, after the discovery of Quagmire and Alligator and their power level on this map, I really like it. Now, we get a fairly non-standard opener from our orange player. That is, we get a Mopsy only, and then a bank to 9 keys. The answer from our blue player is a Newly Dead, and then a similar bank, so they're both standing at 9. Sitting at 9. I'm not really sure. But here, in case anybody was wondering, is... Whoop, I can't click on him. Alright. Alright, we're going to have to wait until he stops. We see a Charon. Alright, now we can click on Charon. Charon, no fair, disables map tiles, so therefore the lava, and leaves this trail of sludge, or mud. And it disables the tiles for 2 turns. So, we see a follow-up jar, but this is actually pretty cool. The reason why Alligator and Quagmire are very strong on this map is due to their regeneration abilities. They can kind of ignore the lava tiles. Similarly, Charon can do the same and set it up for the rest of your phobies to stand on the lava, get better positioning, at least temporarily, until the mud wears off. Now, the answer from our blue player is Klepto and Clinico. I'm not real sold on the Clinico yet, but I can understand the Klepto, like that makes sense. And one other point of note is that, whoa, maybe not. I was going to say that this jar could have gotten in position onto the stem and been fairly safe, but they're electing not to. It's actually equalizing the panic points with the jar, whereas we see Charon just run layer and layer of mud over these tiles. Now, they don't appear to stack. The mud tiles don't appear to stack. So we're not getting like 4 turns of disable by walking over this. Or at least it doesn't look like it. But this allows for slow phobies, such as Erratic, which I personally don't like on this map, to actually get in the mix and have some value. Because you don't have to worry about this awkward movement around the lava and then, oh, I have to dive them in and they're going to be exposed and whatever. No, just stand on the lava for a turn. And then that way you can inch up the way you want to. So as a result, our blue player has gone into the typical response to Erratic, that is a sheep. On this map, I can understand it a little bit more. I think it's a little more awkward or a little more difficult to get multiple connections with the Erratic because you're going to be avoiding the lava anyway. So therefore, the Erratic may not be able to leech life in the way that you would want to. Now, the only problem here is that, as you could see, because this panic point was disabled, that means that technically, it's a 2-to-1 blue panic point advantage due to the Charon. But the Charon did turn off the healing spa for, a little while. And we get the advance from the newly dead. The Bowmangles is now trying to come back and hold this position. And we get a follow-up Erratic from our blue player. The Klepto over here on the stim is fine, but this is one of the maps where the stim really needs to be occupied by a 3-range phobie, a chuck, a jar, etc. Because otherwise you're not really reaching anything. You have to have something splash. So Charon is, I guess, paid to just do some yard work here. Doing some landscaping, we'll say. Overwriting these lava tiles and allowing for the orange player's phobies to occupy the lava. Now, what's interesting is because it's moving through this Hevo, it appears that it's actually still dropping the mud on there, which would make sense. But maybe something that people either didn't think of or may have missed initially. So, this allows the Hevo and the Erratic to stand on this lava tile with impunity. The reposition here from the Mopsy is fine, I guess. It's obviously in order to help address the newly dead down here. But this newly dead is fairly healthy. So while the Mopsy's not going to go down... Oh, no, it is. Never mind. The sheep is in position to claim this. So that Mopsy's just dead. I can understand wanting to move it down here, maybe even control the stem, but obviously you don't want to lose it for nothing. However, we do get an Erratic hit onto, or Erratic connection onto this Bowmangles. We get the aggressive... Oh, that's a pretty cool animation. I've never actually seen Charon attack, honestly. But we get the aggressive invade from the Hevo. It's standing on the healing spot, so even if Erratic chooses to stand on the lava here in order to get a hit, and Hevo, or Klepto goes in, it's not necessarily going to kill it. Bowmangles is going to get 2 hits. So this would be 7, 8. Remember, this is not going to get juiced, so we'll say 12, maybe 13. Actually, this could be a dead Hevo if our blue player elected to do this. Again, not counting up the actual numbers, it's more fun this way. But we get Smother Mother in order to supplement the forces of our orange player, the pull and the damage. Like, what level is the Smother Mother? Because we've seen some pretty high level ones lately. This is a level 5 Smother Mother. Not nearly the highest we've seen, but it's still a sizable amount of damage, and the pull, of course, is very dangerous. So we do, in fact, get the hit here. And we get the splash. It looks like our blue player did see that this is a dead Hevo. It's not a dead Hevo. 458 to 473. I wonder if this was calculated by our orange player. Because that is really close. And since nothing else can connect, it demands that we get some repositioning from a variety of the phobies on our blue player side. And unfortunately, a lot of them don't have the advantage of Charon. They got to stand on the actual lava, and they cook as a result. So we get some splash action here. Due to the Erratic, it actually eliminates the Bowmangles. We get the Charon is able to, in conjunction with the jar, eliminate the sheep. We're seeing a bunch of keys go down on the side of our blue player for not much gain. They do have the panic point advantage, so it's not completely without value. But now we've seen the elimination of the newly dead, and we get a Rocket Man to back this up. If you've watched some Luffy games, you may be familiar with not Starro the Conqueror up here, and what it can possibly do. But at this stage, oh no. Oh, not like this. This has got to be a dead Erratic. I have a hard time believing this Erratic makes it out of here alive. But we get Octonaughty as the follow-up. There were 15 keys banked for our blue player, as compared to the remaining 5 that we have for our orange player. And we actually don't see the Hevo retaking the point. It's just eliminating the Clinico, which, while there's been a 3-to-1 panic point advantage for a few turns now, you still have over 6,100 health. And Charon's back to landscaping duties. In fact, we can get the Erratic retreat here and allow the staging area set up by this Charon. I don't think can be understated. I'm glad that this game was submitted, because this was a great showcase of what you can do with Charon. Maybe it's still a very, very niche phobie that you're just not going to get as much value out of as other ones on a regular basis. But the times when it's powerful, similar to the alligators and the quagmires on this map, really make a difference. It really makes a difference. So we're seeing the expenditure of the remaining keys. There's one left for our blue player. But this is a rough position for our blue player. It could, like, this Erratic could have gotten frozen instead of getting hit. But instead, it's probably just going to get lit up here. Rocket Man does push out a fair amount of damage. It doesn't have to freeze things. But instead, we get a takedown from Charon. Again, don't sleep on Charon. And we get we're just setting up for the end stage. We know there's only a few turns left in the game. But this positioning, like, how do you commit in on this? We actually get a fairly late alligator from our blue player. It would have been good to see that sooner, but we do get a cool pull, which is going to eliminate the Erratic, push a bunch of damage here on Rocket Man, because we already have the Klepto set up on the stim. When I was mentioning earlier you need 3-move Phobies, well, you can make it a 3-move by yoinking them into 2 range. That's kind of how it works, right? The problem here is that A, Octonaughty on Lava, B, Smother Mother, C, Rocket Man. Yeah, there's a lot of mean things that are about to happen. Womp womp. Oh, that's not a dead Octon... Oh, yes, it is. Never mind. Jar. Jar will snipe the Octonaughty. The Jar doesn't even die. We get the Hevo returning into the fray to eliminate the Bachelor. And we even start softening up the alligator. At this point, it's all over but the crying. This game is definitely going to our orange player, and very well played. You would think... So, just to call attention back to the Charon... The Charon's a 5-key phobie. You have to get 5 keys worth of value, and the positioning is difficult to assign a key value to. But being able to set up in that advantageous position, that forward position, as the orange player, because you can turn off your lava tiles, or some of the lava tiles, is huge. Like, that's a big deal. So ultimately, we're going to see some more damage go down on this gator. Some more shots, and this boom is just not staring down a very friendly, welcoming committee here. Oddly enough, the Charon can't reclaim this point because it'll just turn it off. Although I guess that is sort of reclaiming it because it would turn off the blue, but it doesn't really matter. I guess this was a donation. It allowed our blue player to get a takedown here. But that's ultimately the ball game. So shout out to Antdude. This was definitely a cool game. Definitely a lot of fun to break down the options for Charon. So that's going to do it for this particular set of breakdowns, everybody. This was a long one. It was definitely a lot of fun, but as mentioned earlier, I wanted to get it in before we get this upcoming patch, that by the time this goes live, that patch already went in. May or may not have broken all the replays. We've kind of seen that before. So I want to make sure that we talked about all these games. If you're interested in getting your own games broken down in the same fashion, either for YouTube or for Twitch, head on over to the Random Thoughts Discord. It's in the YouTube description down below. And of course, you can always check out the live stream, RTChompGG, over on Twitch. But like I said, that's going to do it for this time. So as always, everybody, thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and Black Lives Matter.